Tonight, the uncomfortable truth about our retirement savings as the government contemplates KiwiSaver changes, and the two Kiwi-born teachers now working in Australia set to retire with $2.5 million in the bank. It's astonishing. Simon Vincent will shock you into action as he tells you his story from across the ditch. It is an astonishing story. Don't you worry about that. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, welcome to the program. You're with the Editor-in-Chief. Welcome. Evening, everybody. I'm Duncan Garner. Please subscribe. Like us on Apple and Spotify. Yeah, I'm knackered from the 50 press-ups. Man, God, a lot of you saying they weren't real. Anyway, please, New Zealand, this is a plea to wake up and take this seriously. And listen to my next guest, if you can. He's a teacher, and so is his wife, and they will retire with a combined $2.5 million in the bank, courtesy of the Superior Australian Retirement Savings Scheme, where employers put in 11.5% of your wages, soon to move to 12%. Here we put in 3%, and our employer puts in 3%. We are so far behind the Aussies. They will retire earlier, wealthier, and we're like third-class citizens. I make no apologies for what I'm saying here. We've become disengaged sheep. Come on, wake up. We're apathetic on public debate. We need to demand more from our politicians and stop the apathy. This is our lives I'm talking about. Is there anything more important than this? On health, cancer treatments, the drugs available, superannuation, standards of living, the Aussies have gassed us, and we're not just looking at a yawning gap, but it's widening as we speak. Here right now as we speak, it's widening. So let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Over the weekend, I wrote a piece for the New Zealand Listener in which I highlighted that a teaching couple were retiring at age 59 and 60 with $2.5 million in the bank. Retiring at age 60 with $2.5 million in the bank. That's because they had no choice but to join the Australian version of KiwiSaver, and their employer has put in a generous amount of money from day dot. Currently, it's 11.5% of their wage. The employer puts in, it's going to 12% shortly, very shortly. It means the Aussies have saved $4.6 trillion. Our KiwiSaver is nowhere near that, at just $112 billion. We are so poor in comparison, and employers are forced to put in just 3% alongside our 3%. So it's nothing. The Aussie worker doesn't have to contribute a cent if they don't want to. And still, all this, the employers are held over a barrel, and that climbs so fast. The Aussies don't tax their savings anywhere near the rate that we do. Their savings tax is capped at 15%. For instance, I pay 28% here. It's just total bullshit. Paying tax on savings, and I can't see the government doing anything about that. They continue to fleece us. In truth, New Zealand politicians, and especially these National Party ones, have raided and stolen and cancelled our retirement savings all along. And seriously, they have set us up for a much lower standard of living in retirement. It's as simple as that. And I need to be as brutal as this. So back to the Aussie teachers as an example. This morning I got this email. Let me read it to you. Hello, my name is Simon. I began a teaching career at age 27 in 2003 in Napier, Hawke's Bay. I moved to Brisbane after 2 years of teaching and have been here ever since. My wife is also a teacher, so two teachers. We began retirement savings at 0% in 2007, so we had $0 in 2007. We're now approaching 50 with a combined $720,000 in super. At the expected growth rate of international share returns at retirement, we project to have about the same $2.5 million, Duncan, you were talking about in your story. This was accomplished by researching financial education and awareness, maxing out concessional contributions every year, trying to hit the annual limit of $25,000. More recently, that's $30,000. Instructing our funds to take on more risk by investing fully in the international stock market, not their own high-fee vanilla option, and further additional investments that we made outside of super. We each own homes, one without a mortgage. Started from zero in 2008. I have despaired at the state of retirement planning in New Zealand since I left. KiwiSaver only emerged after I departed, and its lifetime runs concurrent to my retirement planning in 2008. I'd be most happy to discuss this further. Duncan, thanks for raising awareness of this critical problem as New Zealand's population ages. I come home for a month in April, and each time I do, I wonder where the money will come from to support my colleagues who never got themselves organised for their own retirements. All the best, Simon. Experienced senior teacher at a state school in Brisbane. It's class, pure class from Simon. Smart, aware, a saver, and a brilliant scheme that sets you up for success. Labor set up KiwiSaver in 2007. Michael Cullen, brilliant. But all National has done since is to take things away from it. Add a tax, reduce the government contribution. And remember, it was Rob Muldoon who cancelled the National Savings Scheme set up by Labor in the 70s. If he hadn't done that, we'd be worth trillions today alongside the Aussies. It was a poor decision. Nationals meddling with our retirement savings has never, ever been good for workers. And once again, they're looking at KiwiSaver changes in the budget in the coming weeks. I urge all Kiwis to be ready to react strongly if they say maybe take away the yearly government contribution of just over $500. They've already halved it from $1,000. I'm just warning you to wake up and watch what they do. Will they force employers to contribute more? For the sake of our futures, they should, and it would be a pleasant surprise, but National doesn't want to add costs onto business, so I'm less than hopeful that they will. But truth is, we need to put more in as a default setting, and so do our employers. The difference with the Aussies is they means test national super. So not every Australian gets a state-funded pension like we do here. They simply don't qualify. Because their savings scheme is so good, employers have paid for it. Huge numbers of working people retire well above the comfort level. If you own $1 million of assets in cash or housing, then you don't get a pension in Australia. Quite frankly, you don't need it. So the Aussie employer pays heavily. And has that ruined their economy? Never. Our employers get away with blue murder and scream every time a cost is lumped on them. But this is urgent. We need to save more, and the government needs to be adding incentives to KiwiSaver, not taking things away from us. Can you believe that KiwiSaver is still not compulsory? Can you believe they tax our savings, which are already taxed because earnings are taxed? Can you believe the government is so wimpy, and the last one too, that they shy away from making business contribute anymore? They're almost sorry for business being involved. If it's okay in Aussie, then why not here? Demand more. But I have this inherent mistrust, especially of National, when it comes to saving schemes. KiwiSaver was never their idea. They've meddled with it, which has not benefited us at all. And their history shows they have a dislike of such a compulsory scheme, even though it's not compulsory. Fight your corner, New Zealand, because no one else will.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, so Simon and his wife, both teachers, as I mentioned, they left Hawke's Bay in 2005 for Australia, never looked back. And by the time they will retire, they will have $2.5 million combined. It's an astonishing amount of money. Their savings story is one which we all need to hear and take note of, because we're the poor cousins. They'll be the rich ones, and our standard of living is so much lower. So let's find out more. Simon, welcome to the podcast. Lovely to see you. Thanks so much for getting in touch.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And what made you get in touch? Was it that this is such an important issue you wanted to tell your story?
I wanted just to provide sort of a personal context and assure anybody reading or paying attention to these stories that that retirement is achievable for public servants such as teachers, nurses, and police. That it is absolutely something that is accessible, and you can have a comfortable retirement, not just like a minimalist one. Here in Australia, in my experience, as long as you're attending to your retirement and you've discovered that the information is accessible and available, and that you actually attend to it, a little bit of personal responsibility and accountability to your own future, and that you don't just depend on the government to provide for you in your later years, because I mean everybody's going to have their own story of where they expected the government to do something and it never followed through. So you have to get it yourself. And the Australian superannuation system, which is quite a lot older than the New Zealand one, contributes more. It invests in the country with the funds, and you can pull the levers to how it's invested as well, and take some ownership of your own retirement outcome.
So you left the Hawke's Bay, so you became a teacher in 2003. I think we were similar ages. You became a teacher in 2003?
Yeah, I started training in 2003, and I had zero. I mean, I was working retail and hospitality management, and everything I earned I spent. Yeah. And by the time 2008 had rolled around and I'd had 2 years of being a full-time teacher, I realised I still had zero, and there was no retirement scheme. And I started to have a conniption as a 30-year-old guy. I was like, if I don't get a wriggle on, I don't know how I'm going to be able to have a retirement which doesn't depend on the taxpayer giving me something in my old age.
So you started saving in the Aussie scheme. You moved to Australia. You're in Australia by now?
Yes. Moved to Australia in 2008.
Yeah. And why was that?
Well, I felt like I was banging my head on the ceiling of my potential with my profession. And I also, the salary and the responsibility for being a full-time teacher, it didn't add up to me. And one of the stories I like to tell people when they ask why I moved is, I was working at a school for 2 years, and I was working 70 hours a week in order to get 6 month to 6 month to 6 month to 6 month contract. And I was paid at the time somewhere around $36,000 a year, $37,000. And that's that's back then. I made a one-way trip to Australia, and the first job I picked up while I was waiting for teaching credentials to swap over was working for a disability services agency, just swapping client files over on computers. It was just office work. And I swapped from 36,000 to 70 hours a week, and I immediately started earning close to 70,000 a year.
Oh my God.
And it was 36 hours a week. So that inverted, but critically it was the time. I wasn't slaughtering myself, and it's a difficult job teaching. I'm sure your audience will sympathize with that. There are roles and responsibilities, and it becomes you, and you're fully invested in it. And I just needed to make sure that everything I was putting in, I was getting something out of it. At least in my older years, I'd have a comfortable retirement, not a wealthy one by any stretch, but I wanted to be sure that as I got older, if I wanted to ease back, I could do it without the stress.
And so you've been working, and until now I know you've sent me an email, and I thank you for the details and everything. But between you and your wife, who's a teacher as well, you want to say how much you've saved so far, rather than me, so then I don't blow any confidences?
I don't mind talking about it, and I think this is a problem. Kiwis and Australians, particularly Kiwis, we seem to have this problem. We're not prepared to discuss what we have and what it's invested in. And you need to have buddies to encourage you and have those conversations. And I don't mind sharing that. My wife and I together currently, we have approximately $750,000 set aside. And that's purely from the superannuation scheme that is available to employees here based on the employer contributions that are mandated by Australian government. And of course, we invest more than the minimum. So we are definitely putting in the most we can. There's a limit to how much you can put in to get the tax advantage of investing into super, and we try to hit that limit. And if we haven't hit it every year, we're pretty close. So, we expect we're 15 years from retirement. So, if I was to project what the figure might be down the road, some people would use the model that every 7 years your wealth can double if it's invested correctly in the international stock market or it's property or those sorts of things. They say, it doubles every 7 years. Well, that's not necessarily true, but it has certainly been true a lot more than it hasn't.
Yeah, true.
And so, I project that out in 7 years, that's 750, that'll be 1.5 million. And if that doubles again 7 years after that, well, we're creeping up on 3 million. Of course, there will be ebbs and flows in the market, but the idea is that we actually took control of it. So what we actually have in there we don't mind that. We just know that as long as we're contributing to it and it's optimized, we sleep at night really, really soundly. And this is the experience I want for my colleagues and friends in New Zealand. I want them to not have to stress about what happens in retirement or getting closer to it. But we don't appear in New Zealand, just in my view, we don't appear to have a culture where we're willing to discuss it and we're willing to, really optimize our retirement savings. We don't have that culture. It's not taught in schools, and we don't seem to have adopted it yet.
Do you teach finance in schools? Do you teach when I say finance, I mean personal wealth and building income in retirement and building compound interest? All those things. I don't remember ever talking about these until about now. But do you talk about these in schools there? No,
not to students. No. And between colleagues, sometimes it's a conversation that will come up, and superannuation funds will offer to send staff along to schools into a staff room and meet with the staff and discuss retirement planning, which is great. I'm not sure if that happens in New Zealand. I would expect it ought to, and it probably does, but it's an important thing because, again, it's encouraging people to download the app, to log in, to investigate the fees you're paying, to discuss your risk tolerance, to perhaps target what your investment is being invested in. Your contributions are being invested in. These are the things that will generate wealth. It's just about, really giving us stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's becoming alert and becoming aware.
Accountability.
Yeah, and being aware of what's around you. So be aware. Your money's invested. Find out where it's invested. A lot of people don't even know in New Zealand what company their money is investing because it's in a default setting, and get it out of the default setting straight away because they're not returning what the good ones return. So just get. I mean, do people care about themselves? The answer is yes. So show it by showing some action in this area.
Yes, I agree. The range of options that you can turn your contributions towards. There's international shares, there's property, there's well, you name it. You go in there, and a lot of people don't even know what's available to them because they just leave it in that default option, and they're paying what I would argue moderate to high fees than perhaps what they need to. Perhaps they'd be comfortable with that, but if they haven't had that investigation, how would they know? And so we're dealing in New Zealand with only 3 or 4% employer contributions, which compared to, I think here in Australia, they're about to make it 12% in July. They're raising it to 12%. That the impact of that compounding over time is immense. So you need to get control of it because it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and you don't see the businesses falling over in Australia as a result of having to contribute. It's become cultural. I mean, they know it because it's been around for 40, 50, 60 years, so they've always been like this, although it has increased to 12 over time. In terms of income, if you were a teacher in Australia in New Zealand now, what would you be earning compared to what you earn now? How does it look?
Well, I had a look at this in April last year, and I think it was somewhere around 90,000. If we talk New Zealand dollars, about 90,000, top of the scale. And of course, in New Zealand, at least when I was teaching there, in order to get more than your base, you had to take management units, and they would give you an extra amount of money per unit. But then there were limited numbers of units available to staff, and everybody competed very hard to get them. Wasn't very collaborative in my experience. We were like looking at each other's shoulders and judging one another's performance about, oh, you're getting this extra money and you're not doing the greatest job. And I thought that was an interesting approach. But to compare the salary here at the top of the scale for teaching, it's about 124,000 Australian. So if you want to do the conversion, it works out somewhere around 145,000 New Zealand. And that means when people say to me, Si, have you ever thought of maybe coming home and looking towards school leadership, becoming a principal? Financially, I couldn't do it. I'd be taking a haircut of over 30%. So the salaries don't match. But again, it's not what you earn. And I put this in the email when I was having this, lovely interaction with you and your producer. People forget that the salary is one thing, but what you save and what you invest, that can make you wealthy.
Yeah, and that's the very reason why I wanted to get you on today, and the reason why you got hold of me as well. As a result, I think because it's not so much what you earn. I mean, that's important in day-to-day stuff, but it's what you're putting away as a compounding sort of life investment. You're going to be worth $2.5 million, you and your wife, come retirement in 10, 15 years' time, and you'll have freehold homes. It is a phenomenal amount of money when you think about it. Growing up in a New Zealand context, $2.5 million, and you guys are professional teachers.
Yeah. We work hard, and we've made smart choices. And these aren't secret choices which aren't available to general public.
Yeah.
The financial literacy of New Zealanders is what I would consider suboptimal. And we haven't taught it in schools. And when I was a kid, none of this was available to me. I remember learning about economics for the first time as a third former, as we used to say back in the 90s, late 80s. I was a third former. And that opened up my eyes. But it's not emphasized, it's not encouraged, and I think it needs to be. So whether that is something the government can help with, the government of the day, we need successive governments to help change the culture and make people understand that this isn't something that is difficult. You can get financial advice. Financial advisors are a wonderful resource. They will charge you for the advice, but there is also an absolute world of education out there that you can dive into. And without giving official plugs to your audience about certain books I've read, there are popular Australian well, you call them a financial advisor, but they teach you how to budget properly, and they teach you the value of saving and how that can compound. There's a gentleman called Scott Pape. He wrote a book called The Barefoot Investor, and that continues to be the #1 selling book in Australia. And that helps people get out of trouble, and it also steers people towards the next step, which is possibly going off and getting financial advice for retirement.
Have you gone without? Have you and your wife made sacrifices that means you don't have a holiday when you want to, or you don't go for coffee, or you don't go to a cafe or restaurant? How do you live?
I want for nothing. And that doesn't mean I'm eating 5-star meals 5 nights a week. I've had a time in my life where that was something I dabbled in, and honestly, it's that beautiful saying, it is people, it is people, it is people. You find that stuff doesn't feel rewarding after a while. So yeah, we get coffee every morning. We have a coffee date. We go to various cafes, but we might not have breakfast everywhere in the morning. We might just have the coffee. I pack my own lunch. I'm not buying my lunch all the time. I'd rather save the money. I'd rather invest it, because it becomes fun, Duncan. It actually becomes fun watching the money tip in, and then watching how it reacts to, different volatility in the stock market. And that might scare some people. And we know that the market is going through some fluctuations at the moment with changes in US leadership, but that's to be expected, because over 100 years, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down.
Yeah, but it goes up.
10% per year average increase in the international stock market over 100 years is the average. Yeah. And there will be times where it's a buying opportunity. There'll be times where it's overvalued. But if you dollar cost average and you're just chipping in a little, just a little. I sent an email through, I think you may have seen it, $100 a week for 30 years. If you get the international stock market return on that through an exchange traded fund, well, that could project out to over $700,000, and that's only $140,000 you've actually put in, but the compounding just takes off. Now, how did I learn that? Not from a teacher, but I had to go looking. And I didn't have to look very hard, but I did have to decide it was important enough to go looking.
But I'll tell you what, the best way, God, you'd be a good financial advisor, but the best way is to actually start saving. The best advice I could give, and I'll ask for your advice in a second, but is start saving, and you will see the compound interest. I saw this myself. I started to pour more money than I needed to into this from 2015 onwards. So I really pumped money into it when I was earning good money. And so suddenly it's 100,000, 200,000, and it suddenly it really grows quickly. And you can see this thing, it's like bulges and bump, 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 like that, and on the good times. And yes, it comes back pretty seriously when there's a bad blip, but then they buy shares at the low and it goes again. So
it's just shares on sale at that point. You go, well, everything I'm putting in, I'm getting it for less than I would have. It's bad. Market volatility is particularly bad if you're just about to be in a position where you must sell, like you're about to retire. And my heart goes out to anybody who was thinking, 6 months ago that it was time to retire, because they may have to work a little bit longer till the market recovers, but that's life. It always recovers.
Yes.
And it's just a waiting game.
So have you thought about how you'll retire, what you'll do, what you guys will do? Because it's not that far away. You could probably retire at 60 as well, remember, not 65. You can probably come a bit earlier.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd about it. I've got spreadsheets and I've worked out, if I get this, and, I don't know. Like, I don't want to retire because I actually love what I do. I don't think I'll ever retire. They're going to have to drag me out of teaching. I'm going to teach till I drop.
Yeah.
But I can definitely choose how much I scale it back, and feel comfortable about it. And if I have a health problem one day, I know I've got something that I can depend on to rely on, and not have to go cap in hand to agencies, because I've just done a little bit of work ahead of time. And it's not difficult to set a little bit aside, and perhaps the difficult thing is starting. So you must start. And then, as you say, in your experience, you watch the effects, and it starts to become exciting when you look at it just jump, because the market's doing well.
You see, you'll be looking for yours to hit the $1 million mark at some stage because you guys have combined 720, 740, 750, and so you're not far off $1 million. Now imagine, I mean, there's always been a bit of a figure, $1 million saved. You know, it's just that's a remarkable number. Congratulations. You know, and
Well,
it will
thanks.
just grow
You're not allowed
so
to touch
quickly.
it till you're 60.
Yeah, but that's better than here. 65 is here.
Yeah, so start now. For anybody watching, financial advice is an interesting thing. You've got to really be careful who you take advice from.
Yep.
There's plenty of people on social media. I'm sure anybody who's scrolling can scroll down and you'll see the next person who's like, "Oh, have I got an idea for you?" Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to involve stupid risk. What it does need to do is involve a lot of reading and the financial advice available to people who are very relatable now, and they use everyday terms. It's never been a better time to get started. So invest frequently, like invest now and invest often, even if it's little bits. Become used to the idea of rewarding your future self with a little bit of a sacrifice today, and it does pay off.
I'm a contractor now, not an employee, so I have to make voluntary contributions. It's the first thing I do when I get paid. I just throw in, sums of money and put it away. Oh, yeah. But it's not working for you. It is working for you. That $500 I put in there will become, and it grows and grows and grows.
In 7 years, it's probably going to double. All right. And then another 7 years after that, it'll double again. That's depending on what it's invested in, of course. And if it's something like an exchange traded fund that, is invested in international shares or US shares, that $500 in 15 years is $2,000, So you just keep chugging away.
It's such a good scheme, the Aussie scheme. I've always looked at it with sort of a bit of a green-eyed monster. It's so good. And the New Zealand scheme, when it's been meddled with, Simon, it's only been meddled with on the negative terms. They've brought back the government contribution. They stopped the kickstart. It's always this national government, and I'm non-political. And they all cop it from me. And so I
really enjoy your content. It's good.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you for watching. And so they continue to whack it. Now this budget coming up, they intend to do something with it. I hope that they take up the employer and employee contribution as a minimums to 4 or 5%, something like that. But National won't want to impose costs on business. Oh, we can't touch business. Aussie businesses thrive.
Yeah. It's frustrating now as someone who still considers themselves a proud New Zealander, but I don't live there. I sometimes feel, a little bit of a hypocrite to make a comment or even form a view about what happens back at home based on these sorts of arguments. But we have a very good example of how good this works right across the Tasman here in Australia. It can work, and it does work. But maybe it's not a vote winner. So this isn't a shot at any incumbent government, and it's always a good idea as a public servant never to get political, but our entire political class needs to consider the welfare of its citizenry and enable them to look after themselves a little bit rather than to become dependent later on as they age or become unhealthy.
I think we've been let down, Simon. I think we've been let down by successive governments, successive politicians that had the chance to do something and keep something, but we meddled with it. And I just hope they don't meddle with it on the downside this coming budget. That's all I'd say to people to look out for. Just before you go, I've really appreciated, lovely to meet you and appreciated your contact and everything. You're a smart guy. But you've just followed common sense too. You just follow sort of, what's good for you, right? What would be your advice to people? What are the 3 things that you tell people who are thinking about saving and who want to do better and everything?
Okay, Johnny on the spot. 3 things. First thing to do is download the app of whichever fund you're invested in through KiwiSaver, work out your login, and go in and get familiar with its options. All right, that's the first thing to do. Then it's something on your device and it's something that's in your mind. So the first thing is get involved because it's working for you. Everyone is invested. Everybody is. If you've had a job or you've got any sort of KiwiSaver, you're playing the game. So if you want to play it, well, learn the rules. Be a winner or at least contribute to the team, So that's the first thing. Second thing would be work out a budget that lets you contribute something regularly, and it doesn't need to be a big amount. But if you're doing that, it matters to you on a weekly or a payday basis. That's the second thing. So do your budget, figure out what you can contribute, even if it's very small, even if it's very tiny. Boy, does it compound. Like any compound interest calculator that you can Google will show you if you just fiddle around with the numbers. You can project out what it could be. And the third thing would be to get yourself a buddy that you can have these conversations with, and don't do it alone. Get over the cultural problem about the taboo of discussing money, and celebrate one another's successes. I mean, I've just been chatting before this came on. I've got a wonderful friend who lives in Canberra who also left New Zealand a few years ahead of me. And he was working in a supermarket, and he started chipping in way before I did. And he's way ahead of me figures wise, but we're not like competing so far. I'm really proud of him, and he's proud of me. And we've got that superannuation buddy thing going on. Those are the three things.
Now, that's really crucial, that superannuation buddy thing. I've got a mate who says, "Oh, what's yours worth now, mate? Oh, mine's worth this, and oh, mine's worth this now." You know, and he knows the compound nature of it all. Would you come back to New Zealand when you retire? Would you come back with that money? Because you'll come back well set up.
Oh, I would love to, mate. My heart's still there. If things go well, it's a choice I have. And at the end of the day, what we want are choices. That's what wealth is. Wealth is choices.
Of course it is, yeah.
Wealth isn't flash dinners. Wealth isn't the latest car or the latest cell phone. Wealth is the ability to choose or not to choose to do that. If you've got no choices, man, life really can feel like a struggle at times. So free yourself, get invested, and watch those choices become available to you. And maybe, I'll come home.
God, I hope you're teaching economics. I hope you're teaching finance and economics in the schools. I really do.
Oh, man. That was not my forte. I don't know if you can hear right now, but I've got a bunch of kids all tooting away on the recorder in the room next door because I'm a music, drama and arts teacher, but this is my personal passion, financial literacy. So, yeah.
Simon, nice to meet you. I'll keep in touch as well because you're a great guy and it's lovely to meet you. And thank you so much for making yourself available. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. All the best. Good luck with your show, and maybe we'll meet one day and have a beer.
Awesome. My shout. Okay, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, Duncan.
Thanks, Simon.
All right. See ya.
Okay.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, it's an amazing story, isn't it, folks? It's a truly astonishing story. $2.5 million by the time that they are retired, which will be in 15 years, maybe even earlier. That's the thing about the Australians. They're retiring at age 59 and 60, which is it's remarkable. Anyway, one of the letters to the editor time. Let's go. Kai te ranga tera Duncan tēnā kai mihi. I'm from Whangaparoa, the same place as Arawari. He's my chief. I've always been fond of your realness, bro, and I've always respected your opinion. You're not alone, brother. I can't speak for others, but I've got to tell you, bro, truth and justice shall prevail. I proudly identify as a New Zealander of Pākehā and Māori descent, and I'm saddened, fed up and ashamed of how my chief and his party are behaving. Keep fighting the good fight, brother, and keep being you. Nā manakitanga, naku e te noa nā Charles. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate getting in touch. And this is, of course, a lot of the coverage that we've given to the Māori Party and, of course, some of their approach and antics and so forth. So I appreciate your support as a Māori. Appreciate your support. And I've been saying this all along. Māori are traditionally conservative people from what I've seen, and humble people, and they don't like to come across arrogant, but I think the Māori Party is, and I think they've lost their way. They've become an activist movement, and so many Māori are embarrassed by this and have supported the stance that we've taken on this. So, Charles, I appreciate it, mate. Kia ora, kia ora.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, that is us. Thanks for your feedback, guys, and your support. Get in touch through our social media. Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, or flick us an email, duncan@rover.nz. Isaac, thank you, boss. We'll do this again tomorrow, and thank you, Lockie. What we'll do, I need you to subscribe. Subscribing is really important. I saw some numbers yesterday, so we're going to 15,000, so thank you very much for that. Let's try and get it up to 20. Do you think we get to 20 by the end of the month? That would be, there's a goal. There's a go. So it actually helps us. If you subscribe, it really helps us stay in the game because we need this to survive. It's really important in terms of this is most of my work. So if you can subscribe, that would be really helpful. Also, give us a like on Spotify and Apple as well. But certainly subscribe. Just hit the button there. It'd be really useful. Remember, life is no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth. So get out and enjoy it, folks. Have a great day and take care. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.